There comes a moment in history when the wind shifts, when the unseen becomes visible, when what was whispered in shadows now echoes from the mountaintops. A sign has appeared, not a coincidence, not a random flicker of fate, but a prophetic marker, a harbinger. It is as if the veil has been lifted for a moment to awaken, to warn, to prepare. This one prophetic sign has just changed everything. And the question is no longer, what just happened? It is, are we all ready for what comes next? There are moments in life and in history when something breaks through the veil of the ordinary and commands our attention. A moment when the pattern is interrupted, when time seems to pause, and we sense that something more is at work than what we see on the surface. These are not coincidences, nor are they random disruptions. They are signs. Prophetic signs. Signals from beyond the natural realm. Divine markers sent not merely to inform, but to awaken. They are heaven's coded messages breaking through into the noise of our lives, often quiet and subtle, yet unmistakably charged with purpose. In every age, such signs have appeared at pivotal junctures. Before the fall of empires, before great revivals, before divine interventions, there was a sign, a whisper before the whirlwind. But the challenge is this: most people do not recognize the sign when it comes. They are too distracted, too dulled, too immersed in the temporal to perceive the eternal. They dismiss what is sacred as strange, and they label the divine as coincidence. But to those who are watching, who are listening, the sign is clear. It is a clarion call that something has shifted in the unseen realm. Consider, for example, the story of the Challenger disaster in 1986. Just days before the shuttle launch, there were repeated warnings from engineers urging NASA to delay the mission due to unusually cold temperatures that could cause the O-ring seals to fail. But their voices were drowned out by ambition, politics, and deadlines. The sign was there. The data was clear. But it was not heeded. The result was a national tragedy played out live before the eyes of the world. The loss was not just of 7 lives. It was the loss of a moment to respond to the sign. The physical mirrored the spiritual. A warning ignored becomes a judgment embraced. And yet, even in such moments, the purpose of the sign was not destruction. It was to preserve. It was to redirect. Prophetic signs often appear like a flashing light on a dark highway, not to punish the driver, but to prevent him from driving off the cliff. They are acts of divine mercy. They interrupt our pace, our assumptions, our direction, in order to wake us up and turn us around before it's too late. And now in our time, such a sign has appeared. You may have seen it, a cultural fracture, a political eruption, a natural event, a spiritual stirring. Maybe it came through a dream, a word, a seemingly small encounter that shook something loose in your soul. It is not merely a historical event or a natural phenomenon. It is a spiritual marker that demands discernment. If you dismiss it, life will go on for a while. But if you receive it, if you allow it to shake you, to reroute you, to ignite you, then that sign becomes the doorway to divine purpose. We must become people who watch not just the headlines, but the heavens, who interpret not only the data, but the destiny behind it. Because the sign is not just about what is happening around you. It is about what God is calling forth within you. He sends the sign not to terrify, but to testify that the time has come to rise, to act, to prepare. The sign is your summons. The question is not whether the sign has come. It has. The question is, will you recognize it before the next shaking arrives? Will you be one of those who sees what others overlook, who hears what others ignore, and who rises when others remain asleep? Because in every generation, those who change the world are not those with the most strength or talent or influence. They are those who recognized the sign and responded. We are no longer living in ordinary time. Something has shifted. The pace is quickened. Events that once unfolded slowly over years are now racing forward with startling speed, like rivers breaking free of their banks. What was once unthinkable becomes normal overnight. Wow. And what was once stable now trembles. It's as if time itself is accelerating, because in a way it is. We are not just moving through time anymore. We are moving through appointed time. These are not just random occurrences or the product of natural cycles. This is Kairos divine timing, when heaven intersects with earth to bring about decisive change. And in these moments, everything is intensified. Decisions matter more. Delays become dangerous. Opportunities that appear today may be gone tomorrow. It's as if a door is opening and will soon close. This divine compression of time requires a heightened sense of discernment, awareness, and readiness. One needs only to look at how the world shifted between the end of 2019 and early 2020. In the span of mere weeks, a mysterious virus shut down entire nations, changed the global economy, reshaped education, travel, and even the way people worship. Governments were transformed, freedoms were redefined, and systems thought to be unshakable trembled. It wasn't just a pandemic, it was a prophetic shaking. Time itself felt like it had compressed, moving humanity forward into a new era without warning. And many were caught unprepared, not because they weren't intelligent or capable, but because they still lived with the illusion that time was neutral and slow, moving. They did not discern the moment, but those who were watching, The intercessors, the prophets, the humble, the discerning, sensed the tremor long before it became an earthquake, and they adjusted their posture. They prepared their homes, their hearts, and their communities. They were not caught off guard because they understood that we were entering a season when time would no longer be measured in decades, but in moments. They understood that in divine timing, a single day can carry the weight of 1,000, and a single choice can determine a lifetime. In Scripture, this pattern is seen repeatedly. When the flood came in Noah's day, it came suddenly, but not without warning. Noah spent years building the ark under mocking eyes, but when the clouds broke, the time for building was over. Time had accelerated, the season had shifted, the door was closed. That same principle applies now more than ever. We are in a time of convergence, spiritual, cultural, geopolitical. All the streams of history are rushing toward a singular point. What took centuries to unfold in the past now happens in months. What required long processes now breaks forth in a moment. This is why delay is no longer an option. We cannot afford to sleep through the alarm. We cannot wait for the perfect conditions. The hour is late. The tide is rising. And the window of preparation is narrowing. If you try to live in accelerated time with an outdated mindset, you will miss what God is doing. The old rhythms no longer apply. We must walk in step with the Spirit, not tradition. The urgency of the hour is not to stir up panic, but to stir up purpose. You are being called to live with clarity, with vision, with intentionality. This is the hour for decisive obedience. Not someday obedience, not delayed obedience, but now obedience. Because in this appointed time, hesitation becomes disobedience and comfort becomes compromise. The season has changed, and in this new atmosphere, your calling matters more, your voice carries further, your steps reach deeper. Everything is counting in ways it didn't before. And so you must choose to live not just in time, but in divine time, recognizing the holy urgency of the moment and aligning yourself accordingly. For the signs are clear. We have entered a season where everything is accelerating. The question is not whether you are busy, but whether you are moving in sync with God. Because in this hour, alignment is survival and discernment is destiny. The time is no longer neutral. It is prophetic, it is strategic, and it is now. What if the shaking in your life, in your nation, in the world, is not the sign of judgment alone, but the hand of mercy? What if the tremors that unsettle your plans and disrupt your routines are not meant to destroy you, but to awaken you before it's too late? We tend to see shaking as loss, as chaos, as something gone wrong. But from heaven's perspective, shaking is often grace in disguise. It is God's megaphone to a deaf generation, his interruption before collapse, his warning before the fall. We are living in a time of shaking, moral foundations cracking, economies trembling, certainties unraveling, and institutions once thought immovable suddenly swaying in the winds of change. But this shaking is not merely about the systems around us, it is about the condition within us. What we build our lives upon is being tested. Are we rooted in eternal truth or in temporary comfort? Are we standing on the rock or on sand? A shaking always reveals the answer. Consider the story of a man named Howard Lutnick, the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. On the morning of September 11, 2001, he was supposed to be in his office on the 105th floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. But that day, he stayed home to take his son to his first day of kindergarten. Every single one of his employees who made it to the office that morning died when the towers fell, over 650 people. Howard was spared. His life was shaken to its core, yet in the very shaking came a brutal clarity about what truly matters. The unimaginable tragedy became a catalyst. In the aftermath, Lutnick committed to supporting the families of every fallen employee. He didn't run from the shaking. He let it redefine him. That is the mercy hidden inside the storm. It strips away illusions. It forces us to see what we've ignored. It presses us to turn from what's fleeting and anchor ourselves in what's eternal. Shaking by its nature breaks attachments. It loosens our grip on comfort, control, and complacency. It exposes idols, things we trusted more than God. And though it can be painful, it is in that very pain that mercy does its deepest work. Because nothing can be rebuilt until it is first undone. If your life is being shaken, don't be too quick to pray it away. Ask instead, what is God trying to reveal? What is he trying to realign? The shaking of a tree is what causes the dead leaves to fall. In the same way, the shaking of your life will cause what is lifeless, false, or unnecessary to fall away, so that what is real, strong, and rooted can remain. Scripture says that everything that can be shaken will be shaken, so that what cannot be shaken will stand. That is a mercy, not a punishment. It is a holy stripping away. And when you recognize that, you stop fearing the shaking and start responding to it. You stop resisting and start repenting. You stop grasping and start surrendering. The world is being shaken, yes, but not without purpose. The systems of man are trembling, but the kingdom of God is unshakable. This is the hour to build on what lasts, to invest in what endures, to anchor yourself not in culture or comfort or compromise, but in the truth of the living God. because everything that is not rooted in him will fall, and everything that is rooted in him will rise. So the shaking is not your enemy. It is your opportunity. It is the voice of heaven crying out before the collapse. Wake up, return, rebuild. And if you listen, if you yield, if you allow the shaking to do its work, you will find yourself not buried by the rubble, but standing on the rock, stronger, clearer, free. Because sometimes it takes a shaking to save us. And in that, we find the mercy of God. You were not born at a random time, in a random place to live a random life. The timing of your existence is not an accident. It is a divine appointment. You were placed here in this hour for a reason greater than comfort, greater than survival, greater even than success. In the economy of God, nothing is wasted. Not your birth, your background, your experiences, your wounds, or your dreams. Everything about you has been shaped for such a time as this. When a prophetic sign appears, when a shaking begins, when time accelerates, when the world stands on the threshold of transformation, it is not just the world that is being called into alignment, it is you. You were born for this. Your gifts, your voice, your convictions were not meant for an easier time. They were tailored for this generation, this battle, this season of history. You are not here to escape the storm. You are here to stand in it. You are not meant to blend into the background. You are meant to be a light on the hill. It's easy to look at the chaos and feel small, unqualified, or overwhelmed. But God has never required human strength to fulfill divine purpose. He's only ever asked for surrender. Consider the story of Esther. She was a Jewish orphan girl, raised in obscurity, hidden within a foreign culture. She had no political influence, no family legacy of power, no training in statecraft, and yet, through a series of divinely orchestrated events, she was placed in the palace, crowned as queen. But it wasn't for luxury, it wasn't for prestige. It was for a moment of crisis. When the Jewish people were facing annihilation, her cousin Mordecai didn't flatter her, he awakened her. He said, "Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" That question still echoes to every person who feels the tension of being alive in a critical hour. You may not have a crown, but you have a calling. You may not hold a scepter, but you carry a voice. You may feel insignificant, but significance is not based on size, it is based on obedience. Esther had to make a choice: comfort or calling, silence or courage, self-preservation or divine purpose. And when she stepped into her destiny, trembling but willing, history changed. A people were saved, a generation was preserved. The threat of annihilation was reversed because one woman recognized that her position was not random, it was prophetic. In the same way, your life matters more than you think. The gifts that seem small in your eyes may be the very tools heaven will use to turn the tide in someone else's life. The prayers you whisper when no one sees may be the spark of revival in your city. The stand you take in private may become the foundation for public transformation. You were made for impact, not irrelevance. And this moment is not too dark for you. It was made for your light. But that light must be uncovered. It must be released. And that only happens when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "Why not me?" When you realize that the weight of this hour is not a curse, it's a commission. You have been trusted with this moment, not to fear it, not to hide from it, but to fulfill the reason you were born. This generation doesn't need more echoes of the world. It needs voices from heaven. It needs those who are unshaken in the shaking, those who carry eternity in their eyes while walking through time. And if you've ever felt out of place, it's because you weren't made to fit. You were made to lead, to lift, to shine. So rise. Shake off the lie that you are unworthy or unready. Step into the very battle you were designed for. Because you were not born to survive the end of an era. You were born to build the beginning of a new one. You were born for this moment. The question is, will you rise to meet it? When the signs are clear and the shaking has begun, the natural human response is often panic, scrambling to control, to secure, to protect. But heaven does not call us to panic, it calls us to prepare. And the kind of preparation required in this hour is not external first, but internal. It begins in the spirit, in the hidden place, in the quiet decisions of the heart that no one sees, but which shape everything. Preparation in God's kingdom is not about hoarding supplies. It's about deepening surrender. It's not about building bunkers. It's about building altars. It's not fear-based reaction. It's faith-fueled alignment. Because the greatest danger in a prophetic hour is not what's happening around us. It's what's happening within us. Are we alert or are we numb? Are we anchored or are we drifting? Are we discerning or distracted? The parable of the 10 virgins makes this reality plain. All 10 had lamps. All 10 were waiting for the bridegroom. But only 5 were truly ready, because only 5 had oil. The others looked the part, said the right words, even had the same assignment, but they lacked the one thing that mattered when the call finally came. Their lamps were empty, and when the moment arrived, it was too late to borrow from someone else's preparation. The door was shut. The opportunity was gone. That parable is not about wedding traditions. It's about the state of the church in a prophetic hour. It's about people who assume they're ready because they're present, but who have neglected the secret place, the oil of intimacy, the daily preparation of walking with God. And that kind of preparation cannot be faked. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be outsourced. It's cultivated in time spent in the Word when no one's watching, in whispered prayers when no one's applauding, in choices of purity, obedience, and integrity when no one's validating you. That's where the oil is gathered. That's how readiness is formed. And in times like these, when the world is shaking and prophetic signs are intensifying, we must resist the urge to prepare like the world does. The world reacts in panic. The prepared heart responds in peace. The world rushes to control. The wise believer surrenders deeper. This doesn't mean we ignore practical needs, but it means we prioritize the spiritual. We don't just stock our shelves, we stock our souls. We become like Noah, who didn't just build a physical ark. He built a life of obedience in a world of rebellion. He prepared not just logistically, but spiritually, and that preparation preserved generations. The ark wasn't just wood, it was a testimony. And so is your life. Every time you choose prayer over panic, holiness over compromise, worship over worry, you are building, you are preparing. And that kind of preparation carries weight in heaven. It sends a signal in the spiritual realm that you are not merely reacting to the times. You are aligning with the kingdom. It positions you to not only endure what comes next, but to be a voice of hope in the midst of it. Because when the storm breaks, people don't need more fear. They need those who are grounded. Those whose peace doesn't come from headlines, but from heaven. Those who've stored oil, who've walked with God, who've built quietly for years, and who now shine when others are stumbling. That is what it means to be ready. Not loud, not flashy, but rooted, resolved, and full of the fire that only comes from private surrender. So let the world panic. Let it race. Let it chase every temporary fix. But you prepare. Wake up early. Guard your time. Feed your soul. Listen for the whisper. Build the ark of your life plank by plank with obedience. Because the hour is late and the signs are many. And when the call comes, and it will come, what you've stored in secret will be the light that guides others home. Panic fades. But preparation remains. Choose the oil. Choose the altar. Choose the way of readiness. For the wise will not be surprised. They will be shining. What lies ahead is not just a test. It is a doorway, a threshold, a crossing over from what was into what will be. And as with all thresholds, the next season cannot be entered casually. It requires a decision. Every crisis, every shaking, every prophetic sign presents a divine opportunity, not just to endure, but to enter. It may look like loss. It may feel like confusion, but beneath the surface, something sacred is being offered, a chance to step into a higher purpose, a deeper walk, a greater impact. But to enter that doorway, something must be left behind, the familiar, the comfortable, the safe. The next move of God will not fit inside yesterday's vessel. What worked in the last season may weigh you down in this one. That's why the pressure increases, the path narrows, the fire intensifies, not to destroy you, but to refine you for what's next. In Scripture, Israel faced such a threshold moment at the Jordan River. After decades of wandering in the wilderness, the promised land lay before them. But before they could cross, they had to consecrate themselves, follow the ark of God, and step into the waters while they were still rushing. There was no bridge, no obvious way across. It required faith to move forward. The river didn't part until their feet touched it. That's how thresholds work in the kingdom. Movement precedes miracle. Obedience precedes revelation. The test is never just about survival. It's about transformation. Do you trust God enough to step into what you cannot yet see? That's the question this hour is asking. Because what comes next is not just a challenge to withstand, it's a door into your calling. And often, the most significant doors are hidden behind the most intense resistance. Think of Corrie ten Boom, a Dutch woman who, along with her family, helped Jews escape the Holocaust during World War II. For her acts of courage, she was imprisoned in a concentration camp. Her life was shattered, her body broken, her future uncertain. But that prison became the threshold to a global ministry. After the war, she traveled the world preaching forgiveness, hope, and the faithfulness of God in suffering. The doorway to her purpose didn't look like opportunity. It looked like tragedy. But she stepped through it, and what was meant for evil became a conduit for redemption. That is what God does. He turns valleys into pathways. He makes thorns grow roses. But only for those willing to walk through the doorway when it appears, no matter what it looks like on the outside. And make no mistake, doors don't always look like doors. Sometimes they look like closed chapters, sudden changes, unexpected losses, or divine disruptions. But behind the appearance is an invitation. And that's why discernment is crucial. You must learn to recognize the moment when the test is really a transition, when what feels like pressure is actually preparation, when the pain is not a punishment, but the labor before birth, We are in such a moment now. The world is being positioned. Kingdoms are shifting. Foundations are shaking. And yet, in the midst of it, God is opening a doorway. Not just to survive the storm, but to emerge transformed by it. But you cannot bring everything with you. You must leave behind the fear, the compromise, the excuses, the lesser identities. You must be willing to walk through, even if your voice trembles and your knees shake. Because what lies beyond the doorway is more than just survival. It is purpose. It is power. It is destiny. So do not shrink back. Do not settle for safe. Do not wait for the storm to pass before you move. The doorway is now. The test you face may be the threshold you've been praying for. Step into it. Trust the one who stands at the door and knocks, not to destroy, but to invite. Because what comes next is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of everything you were created for. So I ask you again, are you ready for what comes next? Not ready as the world defines it with fear, survival kits, and escape plans, but ready as heaven defines it, with fire in your soul, oil in your lamp, and your eyes fixed on the horizon. The sign has been given. The trumpet has sounded. The shaking has begun. This is not a rehearsal. This is not theory. This is the moment. Now rise. Take your place. The future is not waiting. It's arriving. You have been summoned for such a time as this.
Be ready, be bold.
And above all, be faithful. The sign has come. Everything has changed.